Friends, I treat these movies the way a doting grandpa treats his grandchildren. I find something to love about each one. Now, this particular movie often elicits a negative first reaction. Often. And I'm still going to love you even if you disagree with what I'm trying to say today. But I want you to give it a second chance. Because just like, and who likes jazz? Okay? It's not difficult to like Duke Ellington on the first hearing. You may need 2 or 3 hearings to like Coltrane. You know what I mean by that? You may need 2 or 3 viewings to come to like this. In part because of the weirdness factor. So the movie goes from creative to bizarre when you come across the Watchers. So the first thing I want to tell you is that the Watchers are far less, quote, unbiblical than Nefertari, Ramesses, and Moses' love triangle. That's far more unbiblical, and yet no one complains. Why do we complain about the Watchers? First of all, because they look weird. And secondly, because it feels like something from the Marvel comic book universe. I want you to know that's intentional. Aronofsky, the filmmaker, could not get Paramount to fund this program, this project. So he did something tremendously creative. He got his college roommate, Ari Handel, to write a comic book with him, a graphic novel, which is the first draft of this. And if you think about that as a comic book look, that's indeed what they do. And he built the audience to demand the movie, to persuade the studio to fund the project. Isn't that creative? Yeah. He built his audience. Churches could do the same thing. Maybe what they should do is create something like pub theology. Create an audience, right? It works. It works. Okay, so why do I say that the Watchers are far less unbiblical than Moses, Nefertari, Ramesses triangle? Because of Genesis chapter 6, verses 1 through 4. The paragraph right before the Noah story, which tells us about the children of the divine, B'nai Elohim, who came down and fell in love with Benot Ha'adam, the daughters of humanity, and produced the race of giants with them, the Nephilim, the Rephaim. And it's a little seemingly mythological bit of detritus that wasn't thoroughly edited by the strictly monotheistic priestly editors who lived in the Babylonian exile. It looks as if something that was too old to be patchki with. That's a technical term, you realize. It's Yiddish, but you know what I mean? You can't patchki with this. It was already sanctified by, I don't know, a millennium of tradition, or 700 years of sacred storytelling. They couldn't not keep it in the Bible, but it is frankly mythological. You know, this idea of demigods, that sounds like Greek paganism. Right? It doesn't sound like biblical monotheism, and yet it's there. It's there because it's obviously a memory which was so old as to be unimpeachably sacred. So those B'nai HaElohim are the inspiration for the late Second Temple era book of Enoch, which tells their story. And their story is that they sinned. Remember, this is the same part of religious history that produced the notion of Lucifer, the sinning angel. That's not part of classic Judaism, by the way. Satan in the book of Numbers is just God's angel who is standing in Bilam's way as Bilam rides his donkey. The word Satan means to be an adversary. It's not like you have a calling card with a capital S and a monogram on it. Satan's not his name. Satan means the adversary. And then in the book of Job, Satan means the Commonwealth Attorney. No offense to anyone. Right? In any system of justice, someone is the accuser. That is Satan's role. Okay, he's the Hamilton Burger of the Bible. Remember Perry Mason? Hamilton Burger? Okay. And God is sometimes a judge who inclines to the defense, right? As in the book of Zechariah, where the high priest Joshua is on trial, and Satan is standing next to him to accuse him. And God says, "Hush, Satan, be quiet, Satan. I'm ruling for the defense on this one." It's only after the conclusion of the Hebrew Scriptures that the notion of an angel becoming rebellious took root in post-biblical Jewish consciousness, but of course it's at the cradle of Christianity, of course. And it's that same constellation of ideas that gives us these rebellious angels. So it's not so unbiblical after all, even though it looks frankly weird. Now, what was their sin? Too much compassion. That's intriguing. That gets us back to Aronofsky's own particular vision. But the basic idea that there are fallen angels, it's more surprising to me than it should be to you, because it's congenial to the Christian tradition. So I wanted to say that to take away the biggest weirdness of the film. The second thing which is weird about the film is that Noah misunderstands what God is telling him to do. And that's, for me as a Jew, a more important problem than the fact that someone depicts an angelic being looking this way or that way. Because no two books of the Bible depict an angelic being in the same way anyway. There's a whole constellation of ways of depicting angelic beings, right? The book of Isaiah has them with 6 wings each, right? Some kind of divine dragonfly. And frankly, it doesn't matter how one depicts them, right? Except that the movie maker, as DeMille taught us, the movie maker has to decide. But the Bible is more hear, O Israel, than see, O Israel. The Bible doesn't force you to decide. But this notion of Noah misunderstanding God's instructions, that is crucial to the plot. Noah comes to believe that humanity must die. And that is plainly not Genesis chapter 6. Genesis chapter 6, V'hakimoti et briti itcha. I will uphold my covenant with you, so that you, Noah, will be the new Adam. And we don't know from the Bible the name of Naamah, Mrs. Noah, but Mrs. Noah will be the new Eve, right? And Shem, Ham, and Yafet are already married when they come to the ark in the book of Genesis. So that humanity will continue is clearly the Bible's message. This movie, this is its main departure from the Bible. So let me give you at least one way of handling that. Think of the book of Numbers, chapter 12. It's the chapter which is a difficult text. But the Bible has difficult texts, and we rationalize them, and we look at them, and we close one eye and we close the other eye. But they're still difficult, and we have to live with them. We have to grapple. Jacob has to wrestle with the angel all night long to get his blessing in the morning. We have to grapple sometimes through a long, long night of the soul. That's what we have to do. So in chapter 12, which is a difficult chapter, Miriam badmouths her brother Moses. She starts off by badmouthing him for his marriage choice. He could have married someone who was FFL, First Families of Levi, but instead he chose a Midianite, or maybe an Ethiopian, depending on how you translate that word. Point is, not a Levite. Think about it. It's as if Omohundro could have married Spotswood and instead married O'Shaughnessy. That would have been a scandal in the Virginia Register, right? So that's what Miriam starts, but she's just leading with that. Sometimes you lead to try to hit someone where they're weak so that then you can land your real punch. And her real punch is, how come he's getting these 5 books of Moses? I'm a prophet too. What about the 5 books of Miriam? At which point God just slams her and she ends up getting leprosy. Not because she's cavorting with Dathan, as DeMille has it, because he wants sex as a spectacle. But that's the reason why the Bible afflicts her with leprosy. And then Moses prays for her. It's the shortest prayer ever in the Bible. El na rifa na la. Please, God, please heal her. And it works. A lesson for pastors and rabbis. 5 words, only 4 different words, and it works. Like rub-a-dub-dub, thanks for the grub. Yay, God. Sometimes short prayers are perfectly good. So, in that chapter, which I acknowledge is a difficult chapter, God says something very revealing. God says, all the other prophets are not like Moses. All the other prophets only discern what I'm trying to say to them dimly, darkly, as if through a glass, in riddles, not clear syntax. But Moses is the faithful one in my whole house. Moses can figure out the syntax and the logic of what I'm saying and translate it into human language and reduce it to law and give you a way of actually living. Everyone else is stuck with dream images and impulses and fragments. That's the Bible. And that's Noah. He gets dream images. And he goes to great-great-grandpa Methuselah to try to figure it out. And he gets it wrong. What he gets wrong is not 100% wrong. And it's a plausible interpretation of the dreams that he's had. He's seen the people drowning and the animals rising to the surface. He didn't see in his dream one family surviving. So this greatest departure from the Bible, in terms of the phenomenology of prophecy that the Bible itself talks about, is at least understandable. So that's what I want to say about that. And then there's another very interesting transposition. Noah does not kill his 2 little granddaughters. That is a famous Bible story, but transposed. The same way that dreams will sometimes transpose something from one setting to another. And you know what it's transposed from. It's transposed from the binding of Isaac. Abraham does not sacrifice Isaac. When, up until that last moment, he thought that's what God was demanding. And when he didn't sacrifice Isaac, God said, now I will bless you. And that's what the wonderful character portrayed by Emma Watson, who's such a wonderful actress, of Shem's wife. That's what she says to her father-in-law, Noah. God chose you because you're spunky and independent and prickly, and you would know when not to obey blindly. You didn't fail when you didn't kill the 2 granddaughters. And that's what, she never says God, it's always the Creator. That's what the Creator wants. And then you see all these lovely scenes of mother and baby animals, right? This is just so lovely. And then the rainbow comes. So the rainbow is from the end of the flood story, the end of Genesis chapter 8. Here it's been transposed to when Noah finally understands that humanity, for all of its flaws, is still meant to be part of the world. So that's the dramatic unity of the story. Yes, it departs from the Bible. No, it does not depart more than famous stories that we give a pass to. It's just that it's more visually bizarre when it departs from the Bible. So that's the kind of an overview I want to give you. I'm going to show you a couple of scenes, and then I'm going to raise the topic of environmentalism, which is the historical context that we need to think about in order to understand why is this Noah different from all other Noahs? That is why this Noah is different from all other Noahs, because of the subject of environmentalism. So we'll spend a few minutes on that. So let's start now with scene 2, because it's going to establish the good guys and the bad guys in a particular way. You're going to see Noah, portrayed by Russell Crowe, and his son, one of his sons, I think it's Ham, young Ham, So we see Russell Crowe, I think he's collecting a seed. He's a horticulturalist, notice that. By the way, he's a vegetarian. I should tell you that in Jewish circles, the environmentalist movement began with vegetarians. Very important to them.
And
Oh, Ham. Yeah.
what are you doing?
It's pretty.
See, that's the flowers. And they're attached to the ground. That's where they should be. They have purpose. They sprout. And they bloom. The wind takes their seeds and more flowers grow.
Okay, that's
We only collect what we can use.
So notice that Noah gently upbraids his son Ham. Why Ham? Why not Shem or Yafet? Because Ham, at the very end of the Bible story of Noah, is the one who dishonors his father when the father is drunk and wallowing around naked in his tent. So the movie maker wants to begin to set up some degree of tension. So it's Ham who gets the reproof. But notice that the reproof is based on environmental stewardship. You pluck the flower when you should have let it remain. You destroy the piece of nature. Now, he's not harsh with him, but he's definitely correcting him. I don't know if you used to go on nature walks and they would tell you, never take more than one of three if you see something, or enjoy it where it is, or take your camera and collect it that way. All sorts of different ways of leave the trail cleaner than when you found it, all these things. Noah is basically Sierra Club Noah right here. Now that didn't happen in movies from the 1950s or 1920s. So now Noah is about to go up to Grandpa Methuselah. That's Jennifer Connelly, the actress, a wonderful actress, portraying Na'amah, the wife of Noah. I want to tell you that Jennifer Connelly also plays a very important role in the remake of the movie The Matrix. Not The Matrix, The Day the Earth Stood Still. She's the person who convinces the alien not to destroy humanity in that movie, which is just what she does here too. She convinces Noah not to destroy the future of humanity. So Jennifer Connelly seems to inherit those roles. Now they're going up this mountain, which happens to be filmed in southern Iceland. Interesting little fact. Where Methuselah lived, wonderfully portrayed by Anthony Hunt. Methuselah, the last man alive to have seen Adam. Maybe Eve, but certainly Adam. And there he is. And he's not a cannibal in this movie, he's a vegetarian also. The children of Shem are the vegetarians, the children of Cain are the carnivores.
I'm Shem.
That's the oldest one.
Come closer. I see you. You're a lucky boy. Think you must have your mother's looks. Come and tell me about yourself. So, what do you like most in the world?
Berries.
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 Ah, berries, yes. What can compete with fresh, ripe berries? Nothing.
That's far.
Yes, it's been so long I can...
When the flood is coming, and Methuselah is going to get swept away by the flood, the last thing he does is he finds a berry, and he enjoys it. I can go now, God, I've had my berry. That's the point of that little nose. So notice that Methuselah knows how to court a child, right? You come down to the child on his level, right? And you establish trust that way. Methuselah gives a narcotic-laced cup of tea to Noah so that Noah will fall asleep and have a significant dream. And then they talk about the dream together, and in that dream, Noah sees the earth soaked in blood. He sees water everywhere, the people are drowning, the animals are saved, and he makes the mistaken interpretation that we're spoken about. He also gets the sense that he's supposed to build an ark. And that's where these watchers come in. Turns out that the watchers were punished because they didn't follow God's instructions precisely. They gave humanity too much help. Now, where does this come from? Well, it's a very, very old theme in world religion. It's the Prometheus thing. Prometheus gives humanity the gift of fire, and an angry Zeus punishes him perpetually. Here, the Watchers are not punished perpetually because ultimately the God of Israel is far more forgiving than the gods of Olympus, ultimately. So they sacrifice themselves to protect the ark from the assault by the descendants of Cain, led by Ray Winston's portrayal of Tubal-Cain. Tubal-Cain in the book of Genesis, chapter 5, I think it is, maybe 4, maybe the end of 4, is the father of metallurgy. And you see him doing exactly that in this film. Remember, this is the Bronze Age.
But they had iron.
Oh, Iron Age came here,
Yeah.
That's right. Iron is the most deadly metal, right? But bronze can really inflict quite a wound. Think of the wounds in the Iliad, you know. By the way, do you know what expression comes from the Iliad? He bit the dust. That comes from the Iliad. Another one bites the dust, right? That's from the Iliad. And you know, we were quoting Homer all the time and not knowing it every time we went to a hockey game. So, Tubal-Cain represents the technological supremacy of the bad guys in the book of Genesis, and the movie is faithful to that. So Tubal-Cain has an attack. The Watchers defend the ark, but they die in the process. So what does this remind me of? It reminds me of Sidney Carton, Tale of Two Cities. 'Tis a far, far better thing I do than I've ever done before. And every Christian has to understand the redemptive notion of self-sacrifice. So that's what's going on. So the Watchers actually have a nice arc, ARC, in defending the ARK, and they are welcomed back to heaven at the end. So they have a nice end of the story. The ark floats, but evil Tubal-Cain chops his way inside, getting ready for the confrontation at the end. And then we have this strange second half of the film, very different from the first half. The second half is like a parlor drama. You know, they're talking. And in this second half, Noah gets more and more and more disconnected. And he becomes more and more psychopathically focused on the thought that humanity has to die. To his tremendous surprise, his daughter-in-law is pregnant. He knew, in this story, he knew from Nahama telling him when they nursed her as a little girl back to health after she'd been grievously wounded, that she'd been rendered infertile by that wounding. So when she married Shem, Noah was confident that the line of Shem would go no further. We're going to see when she gets pregnant, see what happens then. That triggers a crisis for Noah. She's not Hermione Granger anymore. I love her acting, by the way. It's very, very fine. Maybe next semester we'll get going with this. It's hard to tell what's going on. Can you see what's going on? Well, what we should be noticing is that Nahama realizes that her daughter-in-law is pregnant.
You're not sick. It's impossible.
It's impossible. But it's not impossible because Methuselah gave her that little plant that was saved from the Garden of Eden, which is, you know, hyperfertility. So now the main problem that has to be solved in the second half has been set. If humanity was supposed to go extinct, the only way to make that happen is to make sure that any daughters that she may bear do not survive. This is the opposite of Pharaoh's infanticide. He was going to commit infanticide against the males and did. Noah would do infanticide against females if she bears daughters. Ultimately, she bears twins, and let's see what Noah does then. Let's go to the next scene. This is what, 20? Scene 20?
Right.
So this is already after the flood. You're going to see them in a watery world. There we go. Noah is climbing up to the top of the ark. It's a boy. It's a boy. It's not a boy. It's not a boy. But she says it's a boy because he won't kill a boy.
Where is she? Where is she?
There is Delilah with her twin girls.
No! Please! These are my children! Your grandchildren!
I will not be stopped!
I cannot stop you from that crying! Please do not let me stop crying! Let me hold them! Please, just let them be at peace!
And that is the lullaby that Noah and Naamah sang to her when she was a little
You do not see this.
I hold them.
He can't do it. Now he thinks he's a failure. He thinks he's a failure because he thinks he's not obeyed God's instructions. We know that this is what he needed to do. Just as we know that Abraham needed not to sacrifice Isaac. But Noah doesn't know this. So let's now go to the next scene where he becomes a drunkard. That's why he falls into this cycle of depression and drink and has to be coached out of it to say, no, you did actually what the Creator wanted you to do. So let's see if we can't catch that wonderful scene where his daughter-in-law reorients his thinking to saying, what the Creator wants is for humans to be part of a better world. So here we see the floodwaters are beginning to recede, the tops of the mountains are, by the way, it's starkly beautiful, isn't it? All this filmed in southern Iceland. He's picking grapes. He thinks he's a failure. Jamie, can we do the fast, not just skip scene, but just fast forward? You'll get the sense of what he's doing. He's drinking too much. He's alienating himself from the rest of the family. Family's beginning to make a life for itself. Shem is there, Ham is there. Ham is the one who's so angry at his father because his father would not save the young woman that Ham wanted to marry. Remember that in the stampede? So what this movie has done is it's established a rationale why of the three children of Noah, Ham is the one who dishonors his father. Okay, so let's look at this one. This is where Shem's wife gives Noah attitude readjustment. She becomes his soul teacher.
Will he come back?
Sometimes cannot be unbroken.
I have to know. Why did you spare them?
I look down
It's so
at the
intriguing with all these biblical characters speaking.
all my hands, my arms.
And why are you alone, Noah? Why are you separated from your family?
Because I failed him. And I failed all of you.
Did you?
It's the most important speech of the movie.
He chose you for a reason, Noah. He showed you the wickedness of man and knew you would not look away. But then you saw goodness too. The choice was put in your hands because he put it there. He asked you to decide if we were worth saving. And he chose mercy. He chose love. He has given us a second chance.
And here we go. This is like
Be a
Mitchell of
father.
Omaha. The Wild Kingdom.
Be a grandfather. Help us to do better this time. Help us start again.
So Noah comes back, and there's a closing moment of blessing, and then you see rainbows, right? Can we fast forward to the rainbows? Noah and Naamah have a very touching reunion right here. Right there. So theologically, is what Shem's wife said to Noah biblically tracking? The answer is yes. Consider.
Creator.
Oh, here we go. Let's listen to this.
Made Adam in his image and placed the world in his care. That birthright
That snakeskin is the
is passed down to
tefillin
us.
that Noah's father Lamech gave to him. I'll tell you something about that snakeskin. It goes all the way back to the Epic of Gilgamesh.
And to my son,
The snake is the opponent of the human in Gilgamesh, as in the Garden of Eden. And the snake seizes a plant of rejuvenation, and when Gilgamesh tries to grab it, it molts and it slithers down the well. So the snakeskin is the sign of perpetual life. That's what it's doing here.
That birthright is now passed to you.
The birthright is now passed to you. Life
Our grandchildren. This will be your work.
By the way, the music now sounds like the end of Penderecki's Third Symphony. Very static, but conveying blessing. You hear it?
Be fruitful and multiply and replenish the earth.
Of course, words from what God says to There we go. The rainbows to the other. So consider what happens biblically. Genesis chapter 8, the end of chapter 8, God says, Yetzer lev ha'adam ra mi'meluvav. What can I do? The human heart contains evil from its inception. That's humanity. But I will not again destroy the world. So what does God do? God gives covenant. God gives basic rules of civilized behavior to the children of Noah. And God says, Shofech dam adam be'adam damu yishafech. It's very, very powerful in the Hebrew. He who sheds the blood of man, by man shall his blood be shed. In other words, it is a capital crime in the Bible. It makes murder illegal. For the first time. Illegal. Not just wrong in God's eyes, but illegal. We are obliged to create societies that live by justice. And in that same chapter, it even extends to certain limits on what cruelty can you inflict upon an animal. You're not allowed to devour a limb from a still living animal. So the very first steps of ethical behavior towards one's neighbor and towards the environment. So now I can circle back to what I think is one of the main themes of this movie. According to Genesis, the world was destroyed because of violence. God looked at the world, Genesis chapter 6, Vatimalei ha'aretz hamas. The earth was filled with violence. So in Aronofsky's vision, this violence has two heads. It's like a hydra. One head is interpersonal violence. The other head is violence against the environment. And from beginning to the end of this movie, there's a message of religious environmentalism. If you look at the last 3 of the 6 pages of the handout that I gave you, and I hope you'll do it over the week, you'll see I gave you a number of pages of encyclopedia article about how environmentalism became a topic of religious concern in the last 2 decades of the 20th century, and even more so now. We should remember that the environmentalist movement in modern times, I'm not talking about John Muir and Teddy Roosevelt in Yosemite, I'm talking about in modern times, begins from the secular sphere. It begins with Rachel Carson and Silent Spring. Okay. Then we have the first Earth Day in 1970, and it was not at that time embraced enthusiastically by religious bodies. But in the course of the 1970s and 80s and beyond, there were a number of religious voices in Christianity, in Judaism, in Buddhism, other religions too, which said, no, this coheres religiously. We should be stewards. So instead of Genesis chapter 1, God telling the humans, subdue the earth, we have Genesis chapter 2, God putting Adam in the garden to till it and to tend it. So we're allowed to till the environment, but we have to tend it also. It became the religious ethos of sustainability. And that is the religious ethos that sustains this film from a unconventional but certainly Jewishly rooted filmmaker. So I hope I've rescued this movie from terminal weirdness. and given you at least reason to watch it again a second time. So thank you very much.
As you make your way downstairs, we will do some more thank yous next week, but Jamie Lewis and his team have done a remarkable job in getting us coordinated through all these things, so if we can give Jamie a round of applause. Believe it or not, we rigged this up. This is not how it's supposed to be ultimately, so you can thank Jamie for that. So Jamie, thank you for that, and thank you, Rabbi. We will see you next week.
Yes, we'll be back next week.